there's been a movement in the past 10 years to ditch timesheets and that way because it was seen as an inefficient way of billing. The problem is when you ditch the timesheets and you ditch the measurement, you've got no idea about how long things are taking compared to a benchmark of how long they are expected to take. So we're sort of going, well, hang on, I'm expecting you to take 2 hours to do this job. You're thinking you've got 4 hours to do this job.
Yeah.
Who's right? And because you don't have the clarity, you think you've met your standard by doing it in 4 hours. I don't think you have, because my standard is 2 hours, but I was never clear up the front. But also, like, if we bring that accountability probably less granular but more on a holistic, what is the expectation of that role, being upfront about that right from the beginning and saying, look, this is what we expect from you. This is how we're going to measure your performance. And then once we talk about measuring performance, well, I guess, but then we can have the top conversation about, well, what other incentives and rewards can we factor into your remuneration?
Yeah, Paul, you've hit on such an important point. And if I can put remuneration practices in perspective, I like to think about it as the third step in a three-part process. So let's think about step number one is defining what it means to be great for each individual in their role. And you're absolutely right. If you and your team members are not on the same page in terms of what great performance looks like, you've got no chance of aligning your remuneration to a high-performance workforce or using it as a strategic lever to actually shift the organization. So when we look at those measures of performance, you're right. Often there's a qualitative measure. So how much volume are you getting through, or how long does it take? There's a quality measure, and the two have to be there side by side. You can't have one without the other. I think your example is a great one. I'm delivering the quality that you want, but it takes me 4 hours. It doesn't make economic sense. You need the quality, but you need it in half the time. So that creates a really important focus conversation with your team members to solve for that problem. How can we do this more efficiently? And, that's a great opportunity for innovation and thinking about different ways of getting to the outcome. So that's step number one. What does great look like? And hence, what do we value and what are we going to reward? That's really the conversation you want to be thinking about as a leader. Step number two in that process is, how are we going to measure that? So it's one thing for your team member to know what it means to be great, but if they don't have the feedback or the insights or the data to know how they're tracking, they can't self-manage, and you can't manage them either. So what gets measured gets managed. It's a great expression, and I think that's really relevant in this regard. The third step is then remuneration. So let's think about step one, define what great looks like. Step two, let's measure what great looks like. And step number three, obviously, is let's now reward great. And what I see in a lot of organizations, whether it be with fixed remuneration, which is your base salaries, or with variable remuneration, which might be bonuses or incentives, they reward mediocrity. They don't reward great. And this is where you no longer have strategic alignment. In fact, what I see in the worst examples is organizations who are paying money in incentives for work that they're already paying people to do. So they're having to pay more for the job they're actually paying people to do already.